Oh, sweet Christmas sloth! You're my favorite creature type of all! Give Daddy a kiss! Ah! Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. I gotta say, it feels fantastic to have the intro back in the video. Feels right, you know what I'm saying? So we are here today to talk about unorthodox creature type choices, which may sound a little bit weird on the surface of it. You may be like, wait, what does that mean? It really boils down to cards that require a creature type selection. So when this card is played, choose a creature type, do whatever. Now, in most cases, a lot of these cards are very straightforward. Put it out, choose a creature type. Those creatures get a boost, like they get +1/+1, or +2/+2, or first strike, like something very obvious. But we're not here to talk about those style of cards. We're here to talk about the ones that diverge from this trend. So we're going to start out by talking about this black card here from the Commander 2020 set, Species Specialist, because this is the card that led me down this road. It's 2 black and 2 for a 2/3 human warrior. As Species Specialist enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature of the chosen type dies, you may draw a card. The flavor text says, I don't have anything against Snapdax. I'm just more of a dog person. So Snapdax obviously being the big mythical cat, this is just a play on the whole, like, I'm a dog person, I'm a cat person. Perfectly serviceable flavor text, and it makes sense for somebody who is a species specialist to have preferences and be focused particularly on one group, right? So the idea behind this is usable in a number of different ways, right? Where you can have a scenario where you can choose the creature that is a creature type your deck's based around. Like if you have a ton of a particular type of creature in your deck, or one type of creature that you sacrifice a lot, this is something that's going to net you a bunch of card advantage. But it's all like it's used in both like a defensive and offensive capacity in terms of like the defensive version of it would be to use it on your own creatures, and the offensive ability would be to use it on the opponent's creatures in terms of like, I'm going to go and root around through the bodies that are left over of all your dudes. So I guess the idea is that this species specialist understands how to extract certain things from the remains of beasts. You know what I mean? Like if it was elephants, they would know how to extract like the ivory tusks, but in a more magical world, you'd think of, okay, this individual understands this species so well that they can, like, if they're a specialist in spiders, for example, they would know how to extract the poison sacs. So it's basically the concept is they know enough about particular species that they can generate additional resources for you through this specialization. And honestly, this is a concept makes perfect sense. You as a planeswalker, why wouldn't you want a creature, like why wouldn't you want the ability to summon up somebody who knows everything about a particular beast type? I mean, it is, let's be real, it is a little bit wonky in the flavor perspective because to become a specialist in a species, you would need to spend time studying it. So it makes sense on Ikoria if you found a species specialist that was specialized in cats or one that specialized in horrors or whatever, but they would have built up that knowledge through their lifetime. So there is a bit of a flavor disconnect when you look at it and go, okay, well, how are you a specialist in creatures that you've never seen before, right? Like if you summon up the specialist and you tell it like specialize in these particular type of creatures, and they're creatures that you summon up, they have an easier time studying those creatures versus your opponent's creatures. But it's interesting how punishing this card can be against a tribal deck while also benefiting a tribal deck. The artwork depicts a kind of like little cloaked darkness dude. I don't know what's going on with his hand. He doesn't look human when you look at the one hand he has extended down onto that like rocky ground. It's got like a inhuman aspect to it, and he's leaning forward with a bunch of obviously his blade is red for a reason, I guess, from studying the species. I don't know if this is repurposed artwork. That is one of the things I do when I take a look at especially newer Magic cards, is try and guess whether the artwork was originally intended for this concept or if it was just this card art can fit to a number of concepts and we will pick one that works. Now, the specialist does kind of fall into the category of like, all right, I mean, you can see that when a creature goes to the graveyard, he could be hacking it open with his blade there to get whatever you need out of it. So, like, honestly, there's nothing about the overall artwork flavor that says to me that he couldn't be a species specialist. He has a very unique looking style blade there. And he's got, are those javelins poking up out of the back there? They look too long to be arrows. They could theoretically be arrows used to help down particular species. It's interesting to note that you only gain benefit from this when the creatures get taken out, which actually gives more of kind of a scholarly feel to it. You know what I mean? A species specialist that was able to target the weakness of particular creatures would make more sense in some ways with this kind of artwork, where it's like it gets a bonus from fighting different styles of creatures or whatever, but that also limits it. This card has a lot more capability because of the way that they worded it. But I found that in terms of the choosing a creature type card, this definitely falls outside of the norm in that it's something that you can easily see yourself picking for you or your opponent. So like I said, this led me down the history path of Magic the Gathering. So we're going to talk about some other interesting, unorthodox creature choice style cards. The one that always pops to my mind first when I think about crazy choosing a creature cards is Andzerrin Ruins, because this card is crazy on multiple levels. So it's 2 red and 2 for an enchantment that says choose a creature type. Creatures of that type do not untap during their controller's untap phase. So essentially, it just shuts down all creatures of one type. Sure, if they have vigilance or you have a way to untap them, they're not affected. But for the majority of creature types in the game, for the majority of tribal decks, this is a one-shot card that it doesn't outright win you the game, because they are still going to be able to put out creatures and use them once, either to attack you or activate their abilities before the permanent untap kicks in, right? Because you'll get one use out of them. So this isn't like an instant win. But this against a tribal deck, it's a, like, there are color screws in Magic. This is a tribal screw, and it's got to be one of the absolute hardest. I mean, there are cards out there that say choose a creature type and destroy all creatures of that type. That feels like a way more straightforward concept, which is why none of those cards are making it into this video. But this card, like I said, is messed up for multiple reasons. One is the sheer power level against tribal decks. Another is the artwork. The artwork is these crazy faced pillars. Like, this has a really magical feel to it. This looks like it's up on some kind of like snowy mountaintop. It's called the Andzerrin Ruins. So this is probably some entirely ruined civilization where all of the buildings and everything else have either been reduced to rubble or time has worn them away. But the Andzerrin, which were a people, by the way, this was like a particular group of people. They are now entombed in these crazy like pillar statues with different faces. Some look sad, some look grumpy, some look like they're screaming out in madness. So it makes you think that you would go to this location and there would all be all these kind of like whispering voices coming through, and it would just be a maddening place. At first, you would stumble on it in wonder, and that wonder would turn to horror as you realize that these pillars all still have some semblance of life trapped within them, right? And the flavor text says, the Andzerrins have served me well ever since I first killed them. And that's by Baron Senger. Now that, interestingly enough, that's 2 days in a row that we've mentioned the Baron. At some point, I'm going to have to give him his own lore video. But anyways, the Baron, who is just awful. What he did with Ison was insane. On top of that, he's out there doing crazy stuff like this. He literally turned the Andzerrin into these crazy pillars. And it's just amazing. Like, he uses these ruins to his advantage. They've been serving him ever since. He wiped them out and forced them into servitude, the same way that happened to Ison. So this card is insane on multiple levels. Another weird thing about it is it's a red card. And you won't normally see red cards saying, don't untap during the next turn. That is a decidedly blue ability and not a red ability. Red is more like, you can't block me, bro. This is just, no, you can't use your guys. And that's got a very blue feeling to it, even with like the being trapped in the snow and ice kind of concept. It all screams blue card, which makes this a very, very weird creature choice card. The next one we're going to talk about is Mirror of the Forebears. And I used to read that as Mirror of the Forebearers. But actually, if you're talking about multiple forebearers, you'd use the term forebears. But it does make you think about four bears. So, this is a 2 cast and cost artifact. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. For 1 mana, until end of turn, Mirror of the Forebears becomes a copy of target creature you control of the chosen type, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So this is a really funky concept. You choose a particular creature type, and this mirror can animate like a construct version, but only of that creature type, and only of something that already exists and play under your control. So the idea is, it's basically like, this is a mirror that can be used to, like, the way that it views to me is this is like an ancestral mirror, right? Like your family owns this mirror, and you can go and basically summon up almost like something similar to a copy of yourself in terms of bringing one of your ancestors out of the mirror, or it makes a direct copy of you, but only if you're part of the bloodline lineage of the owners of the mirror. Like, this mirror can create a copy. You can basically pull the reflection of yourself out of the mirror, but literally only if you are descendants of the creator of the mirror. And that is a really cool concept as a magical artifact, and also is a very odd card. A lot of artifacts that turn into creatures just go, okay, I'm a 2/2 golem, or I'm a 4/4 snake, or I'm an 8/8 gigantic colossus, versus this, where it's literally like, you can only copy what's reflected in it only if it meets very specific criteria. And so there's a fair bit of variance there. The artwork is definitely serviceable. You can see this giant mirror, and you can see in it the individual who's reflected in it, but he's facing away while it looks like a copy of himself, or maybe an ancestor dressed in a similar garb, but most likely a copy of himself is actually helping to adjust his robes. It's like helping him get dressed. Imagine you didn't know how to tie a tie, and you could go up to a mirror, and one of your ancestors' spirits would infuse the mirror's energy, step out of the mirror as a copy of you, and like fix your, like, I know how to do a tie. Like that kind of a concept. That's really funky, and most importantly, very different, because that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for cards that break the normal mold. So let's move on and talk about peer pressure. 1 blue and 3 for this very weird sorcery that says choose a creature type. If you control more creatures of that type than any other player, you gain control of all creatures of that type. And that's a permanent gaining of, like you can see in the bracket, it says this effect does not end at end of turn. So you permanently gain control. It's not like one of those red spells, gain it for 1 turn, give it back. It's literally, if I meet these conditions, then I get them all. Now in the artwork, you can see that there are a bunch of zombies, and this wizard has reached out with this sort of like necrotic rod and taken control over all the zombies because he has the most zombies. Such a weird concept, right? Where it's like, if I have the most of a creature type, I get them all. That is definitely far different than the majority of choose a creature type cards, right? At first glance, this is a very like build around me style card. There's no way you're just going to slap this into a deck. Like maybe you're going to play it in a mirror match. If you know you're going to play against someone who has the same tribe as you, this would actually also be fun. Now that I think about it, would be a lot of fun to use in a changeling deck, because changeling have all creature types. So basically, as long as you have out more changelings than your opponent has creatures, then you can take their guys. If it's tribal. I mean, if they have a bunch of different kinds of creatures, you're only going to be able to take 1 creature type, right? That's how it works. But either way, this is a very fun build around me card. Now, at first glance, you go, wow, this is fairly useless. But when this card was created, there was essentially a companion card created for it from the exact same set. And that's standardized. Now, you don't have to use standardized with it, but obviously it combines very well, because standardized is 2 blue for an instant that says choose a creature type other than legend or wall. Each creature type becomes that type until end of turn. So if you had standardized and the peer pressure that we just looked at, as long as you have the 6 mana to cast both in the same turn and have more creatures than your opponent, you're going to get all your opponent's creatures, because standardized is going to change every creature in play to one particular creature type, and then you are going to peer pressure it. And that's a pretty funky concept. You turn everybody into a goat, and then you have your other goats go over and go, yo, bro, just so you know, only the cool goats hang out on this side, man. And those goats are like, yo, I want to be cool, bro, let's go. And then you got all the goats hanging out on your side. And later on, when they turn back from being goats, they're still like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna stick around, man. I like it over here. This is cool. This is where the cool people are, even though I'm not a goat anymore. So the flavor text says, at that point, the wizard's argument got a lot uglier. And this is fun. The artwork is depicting a meeting of wizards, right? And then all of a sudden, they magically all get turned into goblins. Who did it? Probably one of the wizards at this meeting. But what happens is when you change creature type, you take on everything that those creatures are. It's not like just a surface level change. You are fully changed biologically, which means if goblins on your world are dumber, more fractious, more likely to fight, break things, not pay attention, all these sort of things are going to happen. You have wizards having their sort of spirited debate. One gets annoyed with the rest of the wizards and goes, you know what? Goblin ties everybody. And then that's when it starts switching into people like taking swings at each other. All of a sudden somebody's got a sharpened spoon they're coming at you with. It's just going to crazy town. I love that. And I suppose I should explain, because some of you may not realize why they have those specifications about the creature types. It may be a little confusing to you because these are fairly old cards, right? We're looking at cards from the early 2000s here. So the reason it says choose a creature type other than legend or wall, there's a reason for each of those. One is that they didn't want the legendary rule to apply across the board to multiple creatures. They didn't want you to take advantage of the legendary rule to destroy creatures. This is an older time in Magic when legend was considered a creature type instead of a super type, right? So legendary is no longer a creature type, which it was weird to have legend as a creature type and also have legendary lands. So it was a little bit murkier back then. So you couldn't choose legend because legend would take advantage of unique rules built into the creature type. And that's the exact same logic why you can't choose wall, because you may be going, wait, I understand legend because legend's not a creature type anymore. It's legendary, but wait, why can't I choose wall? Well, that's because walls have actual extra rules baggage that are intrinsic to the creature type. Walls automatically can't attack. So if you turn a creature into a wall, it gains the rule, basically defender. This creature can't attack. So that's why they limited it, so you wouldn't be able to go, I'm going to choose wall, all creatures are walls, and basically what that does is for 2 blue mana, you could just use it as a nobody can attack this turn, right? You just go, everybody's a wall, you can't attack, right? And so you don't want that kind of ability with blue because, I mean, just being able to stop attacks outright is not a blue ability. If you want to stop getting attacked as a blue player, you have to generally tap your opponent's creatures down or send them back to the opponent's hand. So they wouldn't allow for this sort of thing. But I've always thought that Standardized was a very fun card as a concept, and it's an obvious gimme with peer pressure. Now, the last card we're going to talk about is a weird outlier that kind of fits into the theme of the video, but in another way doesn't, because you're not allowed, so far we've been talking about you choosing the creature type. We're going to talk about one card where your opponent chooses the creature type, and that's Callous Oppressor. Funnily enough, the last 3 cards we talked about are all from the Onslaught block. So Callous Oppressor is 2 blue and 1 for a 1/2 Cephalid, which is a creature type that's going to be making a return to Magic soon, if I'm not mistaken. You may choose not to untap Callous Oppressor during your untap step. As Callous Oppressor comes into play, an opponent chooses a creature type. It's interesting to note that the order of the abilities on this, because I feel like for comprehension, the best way to order things is to have the come into play abilities at the top of the text box. So you resolve those first, and then you never need to look at that part again, because it's only when they come into play that matters, right? So as the Callous Oppressor comes into play, your opponent chooses a creature type, and Callous Oppressor is tap, gain control of target creature that isn't the chosen creature type, as long as Callous Oppressor remains tapped. Now this feels like the type of Magic card they won't really make anymore because it feels too oppressive and reusable. Being able to just continually swipe your opponent's creatures gets really frustrating because I can tap it, snag one of your guys, and then if you go to come at me with your creatures, I can just throw the creature I took at you from you in the way as a blocker, And if it gets destroyed, who cares? I'll just grab another one of your creatures. Plus, the fact is you can just untap this each turn and steal the creature. Now, admittedly, this card becomes completely useless against a tribal deck. If you only have one creature type, then his abilities are blank, and he's a 1/2 for 3 mana, which is absolute garbage. But the majority of decks in Magic are not tribal decks. And so this guy's power level is actually considerable. It's very interesting that your opponent gets to determine what the limitations are. He gets to pick the creature that matters the most to protect from it. So there is that attempt to balance it out, but it's a very different option on the choosing a creature type when coming into play. The artwork is pretty straightforward. It depicts a centaur with these shackles, and you can see there's this kind of luminescent glow. Everything is gloomy, like the flavor of this artwork, the tone of this artwork, where it's a dark, desolate landscape. And the centaur that's being enslaved here is being kind of played down like it doesn't matter, minimized in that you can see that, first of all, you don't even get to see the full artwork of the centaur for multiple reasons. One is its body and the top of its head are somewhat shadowed. On top of that, part of the centaur's head isn't even shown in the artwork to help illustrate that he is unimportant, just a faceless sort of victim of what's going on, right? And it makes it look like this cephalid that's in charge is just sitting there off to the side, like he's not even concerned. The way that you would just kind of be sitting out at a cafe with your dog on a leash with no concerns in the world. I mean, look at the muscled torso of this centaur. This centaur looks like if it wanted to, it could just completely obliterate this cephalid. Like it wouldn't even be a competition. So that helps to show the power dynamic. And the cephalid really stands out from like he's got like the orangest body with purple garments, which really is very bright in comparison to the overall drab nature of the artwork. Either way, I thought this was a very cool card conceptually. And I did want to talk about the weirdest choosing creature types. So it does vary a little outside of the whole you're not making the choice, but it still felt worthwhile to include on this list. So my friends, let me know what you think about this all in the comments below. I've been enjoying the last couple of days where I've been taking a look at older Magic cards, tying them into newer stuff. That is genuinely fun for me. So let me know if it's something that you're enjoying. I want to give a big shout out to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for supporting what I do here. I am going to be heading off after making that weird little noise. So you know what that means? I'm history, baby.